we tend to think that the Underground Railroad is this abstract thing. Well, it happened there, it happened elsewhere. No, it happened right here.
Southeastern Pennsylvania was a key hub for the abolitionist movement in 18th and 19th century America. The secret network of routes and safe houses for slaves seeking freedom, known as the Underground Railroad, holds a rich history filled with stories that continue to be uncovered to this day. Pennsylvania's Quaker origins, proximity to Maryland, unique geography, and advanced infrastructure all made the Keystone State a magnet to those seeking an escape from the scourge of slavery. Pennsylvania's Gradual Abolition Act in 1780, one of the earliest in America, also provided extra legal protection here. After the construction of the first Susquehanna River Bridge at Columbia by 1814, and the creation of the Philadelphia-Columbia Railroad in 1834, Lancaster County, and specifically Columbia, soon became a focal point in this antebellum period.
What would happen is people would be guided out of Virginia, and they would obviously hear that there was freedom in the north, follow the North Star. That was kind of the mantra that was coming out at the time. So they would leave and they head north, and then they would invariably, almost always, find the river crossings, either ferries, which were kind of dangerous and you couldn't do them all year long, but the bridge at Columbia became this magnet as a passageway to freedom pretty much all year long.
Just before the bridge in Pelham Township, York County, stands the historic Mifflin House, which was one of the last documented stops before crossing into Lancaster.
This property was owned by Jonathan and Susanna Mifflin. In the 1800s, 1810 to 1840, this was a major stop on the Underground Railroad. After the Civil War, Samuel Mifflin, Jonathan and Susanna's son, gives an interview to Robert Smedley as he's writing his book, The Underground Railroad in Chester and neighboring counties. And he recounts this one story about coming home late one evening and all of the shutters in the house are closed here on the first floor. Sort of surprised by this, but he walks into the house, and in the parlor, quite possibly the room where I'm sitting, is two families of freedom seekers, 13 in total. And it's raining outside, and the river is too high for these freedom seekers to cross. And so they actually have to stay here for 2 days in the home. And on the third day, the river level drops enough that these freedom seekers are passed into the care of Robert Loney as a free black boatman who's working in tandem with the Mifflins. And Robert Loney ferries these freedom seekers over to the eastern bank, and we lose track of them after that point, but ostensibly we believe that they achieved their freedom.
They crossed the river, came into Columbia, and found, in the early 1800s, they found a relatively welcoming community.
Front Street in Columbia was home to many documented safe houses. These locations faced constant risk of exposure to bounty hunters, who were frequently hired by Southern slave owners to capture escaped individuals. William Whipper and Stephen Smith, two freed black men who became successful merchants in Columbia, were forced to get creative.
Smith and Whipper, in league with the Quaker families, the Wrights, and other abolitionists, needed to find a way to get those people out of Columbia as fast as possible because they were in danger of being arrested and kidnapped and taken back, sold south. So Smith and Whipper built their own train cars. Some reports said they had 13 of these train cars, and others says they had 20. Whipper and Smith came up with some adaptation to their freight cars where they installed a false wall inside the freight car, otherwise stacked with lumber that you would see if you opened the doors, but there was probably a 2-foot space at the end of that train car that people could slip into, and probably 3 or 4 people could sit there, and it would take 8 hours to get to Philadelphia versus walking, which you would have to go at night. It would take days to get there. So this system was set up, and it probably worked effectively because we don't know of anybody being caught. The actual above-ground railroad, what we believe is the second operating railroad in the country, was used for what became known as the Underground Railroad.
Essentially, the Route 30 corridor provided the path for many freedom seekers. Places like Lancaster and Philadelphia became metropolitan havens on this journey.
That allowed for other freedom seekers to come to that community, that larger metropolitan community, and find support, shelter, employment, and then passage farther north to get as far away as they could from the infernal institution of slavery in the southern states.
Thaddeus Stevens and his connections in Lancaster provided shelter and resources most heavily in the period before the Civil War. The coalition and cooperation between the races is an important part of the story here. The Underground Railroad showed that people from diverse backgrounds could unite against human rights injustices.
It's people working together, crossing the color line. You see Quakers working with free blacks like Robert Loney to ferry freedom seekers.
In these communities and these counties along the Mason-Dixon line, we find and have been discovering continually, again and again, both black and white people in those communities working together and welcoming these newcomers.
Efforts to educate the public through Underground Railroad exhibits and museums play a crucial role in preserving the legacy of freedom seekers. Places like the Mifflin House in Hellam Township, the Stevens and Smith Center in Lancaster, and the newly announced Pennsylvania Underground Railroad Museum in Columbia, which will open at the end of 2026, will be hard at work uncovering more of these Underground Railroad tales for future generations.
It's a fascinating time to be in this region because these stories are coming to the surface. Stories that for many, many years hadn't been told are now going to be told.
We are creating, I'm saying the larger we, are creating a large historic landscape that will attract people for many, many years into the future to tell this story on a bigger scale than it's ever been told before.
For Lancaster Online, I'm Tyler Huber.